Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're back for another Approaching Your Future. As you see today, I'm by myself, but I wanted to deliver a little podcast for you guys. Quick podcast on something that's pretty important for those who are studying in the US. But before we get there, let's introduce the podcast. By the way, I have two screens, and that's why I'm looking this way sometimes. Let's get to it, guys. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Approaching Your Future with your host, Dana, and occasionally Victor, where we take steps forward towards your goals. And today, we will be discussing a very interesting topic, which is something I usually say, but we're going to be talking about international student resources. Resources that you can use as an international student in the US, or things and tips that you should know as an international student in the US. So let's get to it. Today, guys, this is going to be a pretty quick podcast because I have just a few tips to give to you. I've given you a lot of tips in the past on where to get some resources for studying and study tips and things of that sort. But let's get a bit more nitty-gritty today and talk about what are some resources that you can look for as an international student, right? So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go over some websites. All right. All right, so as we see, there's an inception going on. Let's go over some resources for international students. So when you look up international student resources, right? Just want to check that you guys can see everything that I'm seeing. Awesome. In fact, let me share this again with you guys so you guys can see the right page. Here we go. I want to share a Chrome tab with you guys. It's a bit easier. There we go. All right, everyone. Let's go over what happens when you look up international student resources online. Of course, this depends on whether you are in the US, whether you are abroad, but when you look it up, it usually gets you to a lot of pages from different universities. And the reason why it does that is because a lot of universities have different resources for their international student community. And these are always useful, whether you are going to that university or not. They're always useful. For example, if you're a student at Approach, there's a lot of information in these pages that you can find. But let's go over some resources I found that I think are pretty cool. For example, this page here talks a bit about everything that has to do with international students, and I think it's a great webpage to take a look and find more information. For example, International Student Financial Aid and how that works. The student visa and immigration center and all that process, right? University and college search, which is very important, especially if you're going to a language center, for example. There's many language centers like Approach that offers partnerships with universities for you to not have to do the Toefl test, for example, or something of that sort. International Student Job Center. As an international student, one visa, you can only work for the school you're studying at. And so if there are job opportunities in the school that you're studying at, that is a great way to start making some money, to get your Social Security, to start building your credit and all of that. Test preparation, super important. We offer courses at Approach for SAT, TOEFL, Gmat, everything under the sun, to be quite honest. So let's go a bit through these tests. For example, SAT is taken when you want to go to college, undergraduate usually. TOEFL is a test that is about language proficiency, which means that what it's testing, it's that you have a level of English that will allow you to learn in college. So usually I think it's around the 90 to 100 score. When I took it, that was like a good benchmark to go at. But the test is out of 120 points, and it's a fairly simple test and super recommended if you want to go to college in the US, of course. Next up, we have the Gmat, and the Gmat is a test for if you want to go to graduate school. So after undergraduate, we have graduate school, and it's a great test because it encompasses everything. Usually, the Gmat is about everything that you need to know. And if I'm not mistaken, there are two types of graduate tests, which are Gmat and GRE, right? And Gmat is usually the test taken For example, if you want to get an MBA, or if you want to go into management or business, that's usually the test you take, as opposed to the GRE, which is just like more of a general test to get you into any type of graduate program, right? Of course, it depends on the school you're at to make sure that it is exactly what you're looking for. But these are a few tests that you should take if you want to go to college here. So here are a little bit of some things that they offer, at least in this webpage. But I want to go back on Google and show you guys the main resource you must always consult as an international student, okay? This resource is a goldmine. It's created by the government, by the Department of Homeland Security, for international students in the US. So if you want to ever confirm any information, make sure it's the right information, find new information about any topic about being an international student, this is where you need to go, okay? So it's Study in the States. That is what it's called, okay? studyinthestates.dhs.gov, okay? And you can look up anything here and they will explain it to you, right? So for example, let's talk a bit about, as an international student, here are some resources for studying, for working, and all of that. So for example, as you see here, you want to understand how to maintain your status as an F1 student in the US. This is a great website. This has a web page with everything you need to know. And I'm sure most of you guys already know the requirements. But if you're new here and you're not an F1 student yet and you want to become, look up this website, take a look, and then come back to Approach and Apply, because we'll be happy to help you guys with that process. But throughout your study in the US, apart from maintaining status, you have to have a specific amount of hours studying. You can transfer to other schools if you want, and that would be a transferring of your I-20 to another school, which is something that sometimes happens. You can get a driver's license, for example, if you're an international student in the US. That's something that you can definitely do. There's different requirements per state. For example, in Massachusetts, your I-20 must be for a year. But you can definitely get your driver's license as an international student in the US, and it's a great way to get documentation as well, like a physical document from the US government. The other thing that you guys might be interested in is working as an international student, which usually comes when you go to undergraduate or graduate school in the US. Sometimes you get access to OPT, which is training after your years of college. You get, depending on your major, if you're a STEM major, you get 3 years. If you're just any other major, you get 1 year where you can work after college and put everything that you learn into practice. So it's a great opportunity. The OPT is super cool, and it's given mostly if you are studying in undergraduate schools or in graduate schools, you know. There's also, and of course, when you get an OPT, you also get a social security number, or if you worked at the school previously, you also get one. So yeah, this is a great great resource to have, guys. Super important for students, for teaching international students. If you want to find out more about what it is to be an international student in the US and what you need to know and what you can and can't do, this is the place for that, okay? So let's go back and find some more resources that I think could be helpful. There's always different websites that help you. It depends on what you guys want to get help in. But for example, if you're an international student and you're looking to find a community or to find something new to do, what I would recommend is going to Facebook. Facebook has great communities for international students, and I'm just gonna put it here so you guys know what I'm talking about, of course. A picture of Facebook. Let me see if I can find a picture right here. Right, there we go. So you can see the Facebook logo. So that is something that is super common in international student communities. Once you get into a school, you go into a Facebook group that says the graduating year that you're going to be graduating with everyone from that class. It also happens with language centers. We have a group at Approach. If you guys like to join, you're welcome to comment, and I'll link you in. But basically, a lot of international communities foster groups on Facebook where you can find different people to hang out with. For example, you can look up on Facebook, Brazilian community Boston, and then you'll find a lot of groups with different Brazilians, different people within Boston, people that you could build a relationship with, build a community with. I also always encourage international students to get outside their comfort zone, to meet new cultures, to meet new people from different cultures, to try to speak English every day in some way or another so that you guys can develop the language. For that reason, I recommend becoming acquainted with your school, especially with your school community. For example, if you're a student at Approach, you should make sure to get acquainted with our activities. You should make sure to get acquainted with our student clubs and anything that you can be a part of to develop your language and make friends and become part of a larger community. There's many ways that you can do this, guys. And I would definitely recommend you watching the Building a Community podcast that we recorded a few months ago, where we talk about different communities and how to find them and how to join them. But more than anything, it really is just giving that first step. It's putting your foot forward and trying something new and putting yourself out there. And it is terrifying. It definitely is. Believe me, I am an international student. It is terrifying, but it always is worth it. It's always worth it. Okay, you find amazing people, you build incredible relationships, and you grow and you keep growing, and it's all for your growth. So I super recommend finding communities on Facebook. Other resources I can give you guys as international students would be understanding how you can both how being an international student can affect you both positively and negatively. I think it's important to keep that in mind coming into the US. For example, having resources that help you with studying so that you don't have to feel at a disadvantage with other native students. Super important, guys. Like making sure that you read all the content that is given to you in class, finding ways to develop the language. And for that tool, I'm going to give you guys something pretty cool that we have at Approach. If you're someone that's new in the US, is learning English, join our free English conversation classes, guys. These are classes done by specialized ESL teachers, and they are completely free. They happen every week, okay, all throughout the week. We have different levels even, and it's simple. You just got to sign up and get in here and you'll start learning English. And that is a great way to start developing your English. The other thing I can recommend is for you guys to start writing and reading. Writing for yourself, even if it's in a little journal. Like I write all the time in little journals, and you start writing, and even if it's just expressing what your day was, what your thoughts were during the day, super good recommendation. You start developing your language and your brain starts training the way you write, right? And the other thing is reading. I think reading is a great tactic for international students coming in. Especially if you start reading about the country that you're going to. For example, like you're in Boston, you start reading a bit of history about Boston, or you pick up some books from poets or authors that were born in Boston. That's the best way to start getting acquainted with the culture, right? And the historic culture that comes with the moving, right? So I think that is a great tip for you guys, and it's super recommended. And in fact, let's go over some incredible Boston authors that you guys could look into and learn more about the culture. So for example, if we look up top mass New England, because we are in New England, authors, I'm sure we're gonna have Stephen King in there. Take a look, guys. So they have a variety of here. But for example, Robert Frost, incredibly famous author. Robert Frost, if I'm not mistaken, is a poet. And it would be a great way to start getting acquainted with different cultures from Boston. The other one I can recommend is, of course, Emily Dickinson. If I'm not mistaken, Emily Dickinson grew up super near Boston, Amherst, if I'm not mistaken. And if you guys didn't know this, she only became famous years after her death, and she's probably known as one of the biggest or most recognized poets from that century, next to Sylvia Plath, for example. And so there's so many different authors that I think can bring a lot of knowledge to you guys, both language wise and culturally. And I think that you can also always look up, for example, some basic pop culture from the place. Boston, we know that has a lot of sports culture, but it also has a lot of movie culture. We have, like, for example, Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg, them together. They actually, Matt Damon, he, if I'm not mistaken, he is from Boston. He's from Cambridge, and if you guys know, he has a variety of movies that are super famous that have to do with Boston. Ben Affleck and Mark Wahlberg are two that also have the same thing going on. For that reason, I'm talking about Good Will Hunting, which is an incredible movie. Okay, great movie. But for example, if I go to Mark Wahlberg, there's also classic movies from Boston that form a whole generation of culture, like Mystic River, which is an incredibly famous movie from Boston. This is what it looked like. And I actually watched it recently because I was super interested. I didn't know this was such a big movie from Boston, you know. But Mystic River is one that I thought was super interesting. And there's also a variety of other movies that I think that are important, you know, in Boston. Like, if we look up just like top movies about Boston. Oh, Town. I've seen that one too. The Town. Super, super interesting, about the crime of both Charlestown and also a heist. This is specifically a movie about this. How do I put this? It's like they did a robbery heist. I think it was a bank robbery. And it's a story about those bank robbers in Charlestown. Charlestown is known notoriously as a more dangerous city in Boston, a more dangerous town. But we have a few more, as you see: Mystic River, as I told you guys, Good Will Hunting, Spotlight. This movie, pretty sure it got an Oscar or was nominated for an Oscar. Incredibly important movie for the time, talking about how it was talking about how the Boston Globe broke the case of different how do I say this, like predators within the Catholic Church. So it was super important moment, both in history, and this movie broke barriers. It was an incredible movie. And if you guys don't know, like the main like actors from Boston that tend to come up often are Mark Wahlberg, Ben Affleck, and Matt Damon. They are the three actors that always come up, and they're usually part of most movies about Boston. And so yeah, this is a bit of Boston culture and just in general resources for international students. But let's go back to the main resource, which is Study in the States. Right? So here's where you can look up anything and everything, okay? Students and I-20 maintaining status, I-901, the SEVIS fee, everything, applying for a visa to travel to the US, training opportunities in the United States. If you go to schools, you can even look up if your school is SCVP certified or things of that sort. You can understand everything about your I-20, for example, and how transferring schools work. It really is a great resource for international students. The blog is great as well. And I super recommend it. If you're looking for somewhere to study in the US, you want to study something specific, you can also look it up here. You'll find those schools that are able to give I-20s. And I also think that if you're looking to learn English, Approach is a great school for you. It really is. I'm not saying this just because I love working there, but because our school, our teachers are extremely passionate. we have activities and we plan clubs and activities that try to bring that experience of studying abroad to the classroom and outside of the classroom. It's something that is completely well-rounded. And the people that approach are so kind and they genuinely want to see you grow. So I think it's a great place to go to, and I super recommend it if you're looking to study English. But if you just want to get started, take a look at our free English conversation classes. They are great. And before we go, guys, I'm going to show you guys the last resource, which is our blog. We have really cool resources for international students in our blog. Our teachers are actually the writers and authors of this blog. And you're welcome to come here and find any blog and learn more. For example, this one is specifically for Brazilians and talking about different ways of saying things in Portuguese and how it's translated into English. And you can have some of these tips. You can look at different related articles. We also have a student blog contest where students can write and submit their work. If you want to know, for example, here are tips about skills you need to succeed as a student. So there's so many different resources in our blog, and our teachers make sure to put a lot of, for example, a lot of links that are going to send you to different places and give you more things. For example, 12 common non-native speaker language mistakes, how using the T is sometimes is weird in American English. Like, you know, we use it as a D sometimes, like with, or with. So it's super interesting, and I super recommend it. In fact, what I'm going to tell you guys, the best thing you guys can do is subscribe here to the blog and let the blog get right to your inbox, because they're so good. You shouldn't be missing any of them. So yeah, that's it for today, guys. This was a quick little podcast on some things that you guys can use for your study while in the US, some resources that you can implement, some tips, and some other tips, miscellaneous cultural tips to get you acquainted with living life in Boston and in New England. So as per usual, I'm always available. You're welcome to send me a message. You're welcome to ask me for any questions, any resources. I'll be happy to share. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday with great podcasts, amazing guests, and incredible topics. And if there's any topic you have in mind that you would like us to tackle, please comment it below on the YouTube, and we'll be happy to implement it into our planning. So have a great day, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into Approaching Your Future with your host, Dana, and occasionally V, who couldn't be here, but with your host, Dana, where we discuss different cultural aspects of life in the United States. And we'll be back next Tuesday at 2 p.m. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, approach_USA. Okay, it has everything there. We're posting incredible reels, a lot of English tips. It's great for international students. Make sure to check it out. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining the podcast. It was great to have you all. These were quick tips and quick resources for international students, but we'll definitely go more in depth in different podcasts into specific resources and how they can be used to your advantage. So if you have any questions, comment them, and we'll be happy to take a look afterwards. Okay. So thank you so much for joining. Have a great day, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.